Hi class. Okay, so last week we have already been introduced to the fundamentals or the basic understanding about research. What is research? Who should do it? Why we should do it, and everything. Okay, so today we will look at the planning of research and research proposals in more detail. Okay, so as we have already, hopefully you have understood. Um, Research is a process that is very systematic and scientific. Yeah, even though when we talk about tourism, hospitality, and event, we are dealing with social science, which involves which involves the participation of people such as the tourists, the management, or any other stakeholders that we are looking at. Still, there are steps and procedures that we must follow in order to make sure that our research is systematically done and is scientific in nature. So when we do this, we will be able to avoid biasness, which in the end will ensure that our findings are valid. Valid here means it truly portray the real situation or the real context of the study. So when we want to do a research, the process will involve several stages. Okay, so today we will be looking at each of these stages in more detail. Okay, this is the whole summary of the stages involved. Yeah, so after this, in the next few slides, you'll be looking at each of these in more detail. So when we plan our research, we must first of all start with a topic. That is stage number one. Okay, and this is actually one of the hardest thing to do, selecting a topic, because remember when we try to do research, we have to be able to find the research problem first. We have to understand the situation of or the context of something before we can say, okay, this is a good topic for me to study because there is a gap of research there. Yeah, so we do not know until we do some reading. Okay, we have to go to the literature. Maybe we start with some gray literature first. Gray literature means like newspapers or uh, magazine or whatever that has some recent issue or recent um, update on certain things. So we start from there before we actually go to the proper literature or the academic literature. Okay, so that's the first step, selecting the topic. Once we have this topic in mind, then we will do the literature review. Okay, this is not a very simple thing either, because you have to do a critical review of the literature. Yeah, we cannot just read and just present whatever you read, but you as a researcher has to put your own thought into the whole literature that you have read. Okay, and then the next step is once we know everything about from the literature about the topic, then we will be able to find the gap and understand how we can design our research using what conceptual framework. Okay, conceptual framework is the like kind of a mental map of all the variables, all the constructs involved in our study, so that we understand or we can make assumption about the um, relationship of all those constructs. Yeah, and then we will decide the research question. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 here, as you can see, is a circle, which means you have to go back and forth between one step to another, just to make sure that you have a clear idea of what you are trying to do. Okay, um, so once you have done 1, 2, 3, 4 properly and thoroughly, then only you can list the information you need in order to do your research. Okay, and from this list, you will have a clearer idea of the kind of strategy you need to get the information, and you will also be addressing all ethics issues that are applicable and get clearances that are needed, and then only you can conduct research and finally report your findings and disseminate as well as store your data. Okay, so this is the whole thing of what we have to do systematically in planning a research project. Okay, but the topic selection, that's the most actually tedious thing to do, because you have to read a lot, because it's not easy to know exactly what you want to do until you read the literature and understand the gap of research that you can fulfill, and then decide your research question and your conceptual framework. Okay. Okay, so now we go into more details about each of the stage that I have shown you just now. Okay, uh, choosing a topic. To choose a topic, we have to have some ideas, yeah, of what is it that we can use as a basis of our um, I mean our topic. Yeah. So as I mentioned just now, it can be we can start with the gray literature, yeah, such as the newspaper and magazine, because when we do research in social science, we have to get the latest context, the latest phenomenon. Um, because since we know that social science is a very dynamic type of context, yeah, it can also be based on our own interest and passion. Yeah, of course, this is a very important. Passion is very important when doing research, because if you're not interested in your own topic, then you will have little energy to finish your research. Okay, so it has to be something that you are passionate about, something that you like to know more about, something that touches your heart. If you like to study homestays because maybe your own family has a homestay, that's considered passionate. Okay, or maybe your father own a hotel, yeah, or maybe there's a destination that is close to your heart because it's near where you live, so you want to study something related to that destination. So anything related to your interest and passion. And then we also have to look at the gap of knowledge. Yeah, uh, the gap of knowledge is something that we get only by looking at the literature, seeing what past researchers have done and found out, and see what else needs to be done, what else is not understood, what else can your research contribute to in terms of the entire picture of the knowledge. Okay, we can also do an applied study on contemporary policy or management problems or issues, yeah, such as the COVID-19. Yeah, some people are doing research on the challenges associated with virtual internships affecting you students at this time of pandemic. Yeah, so that is a contemporary issue. Yeah, it can also be other social concerns such as over-tourism. I'm sure you know what over-tourism means. Yeah, over-tourism means crowdedness, or a place that is so visited or has so many tourists that it impacted the environment or the community of that destination. That is over-tourism. Okay, of course, now that we are being faced with a situation such as a pandemic, then over tourism is no longer an issue. Now we have under tourism. Under tourism means little tourism taking place because people are not allowed to travel or are afraid to travel. Okay. Other social concerns could be suicidal tourism. This is a thing. Yeah? Suicidal tourism is happening in places like Japan for some reason. So we don't know what are the reasons. What drove people to travel just to kill themselves, right? So that is something interesting to understand through social science research. Okay. Or we can look at issues such as plastic consumption, which is a big deal these days. Everything is using plastics. Everything that we buy, we use plastics. So where not many people think about where do the plastics go after you have used it. Yeah, how do we get rid of the plastics? Because you know that plastics could last hundreds of years. It cannot be disintegrated easily. Yeah, so there's always an issue of recycling, an issue of pollution that we can look at through research, and also the issue of water. Yeah, water rationing, like what's happening in many states every year, you know, or water pollution in some of our lakes or rivers, anything, yeah, because everything else will relate back to our industry of tourism, hospitality, and event, yeah, since the industry is very resource dependent. Sources of idea can also be from popular or media-based issues. Yeah, this is for example, the issue of IR 4.0. If you remember, last year this is all that we talked about, Industrial Revolution 4.0, and how this affect everything. Yeah, how it affects education, how it affects tourism, how it affects events, how it affects hospitality. So IR 4.0 since last year has become a very important issue to address. Are we ready for it? You know, in terms of readiness, how much will it take? Uh, what kind of impact will it do to the community, to the environment, to the economy? We have to understand that through research. Okay, or we can just follow what is recommended by past researchers. Remember, I told you earlier, in every journal article there should be one section where they will have like suggestion for future research, where they recommend, okay, if you want to study about this topic, what else should you do? Okay, you can do that. Or the source of information or ideas can come from brainstorming with our friends and colleagues. Yeah, finding ideas. Okay, what do you think is the best way, the best thing to address right now? And you discuss it with your friends, and then eventually come to a consensus. Yeah, or you happen to have a data, a secondary data that you know can be helpful if you change it, use it in your own research. Yeah, this can also be done. This is called opportunism. You see an opportunity and you take it to generate your own achievement. Yeah, your own research that can contribute to your success. So when we try to plan for our research, we have to find a reason to do the topic. The reason can be geographical reason, yeah. Geographical maybe you, from our look at the literature, we know that this research has been done in developed countries, but not so much in developing countries. So now your research will contribute towards knowledge by addressing the topic within the context of Malaysia as a developing country. Yeah, that is the geographical reason to do it. Social reason to do a research is from the literature we have established, or we have found out that this topic has been researched from the perspective of just the tourists, but not, for example, the management. Yeah. So, or for example, the issue of absenteeism that I mentioned before. This topic has been researched from the perspective of the workers, but not so much from the perspective of the management. It could be that. Okay. Another reason could be temporal, time. Yeah, maybe whatever research that has been done on the topic that you're looking at has been done like a decade ago. Yeah, there's no updated information, no new research, or no new findings have been found in the last 5 years, for example, or the last 10 years. Okay, so you know that if you do this research, you will be updating the situation and finding new information or new research to for that topic. The reason can also be contextual. Contextual means uh, that topic has been done, but not in the context of tourism, hospitality, and event. So you, as a new researcher, as a new independent researcher, decided that okay, it's time to address this issue in the context of tourism, hospitality, or event, because it is pertaining or relevant to our context as well. Okay. Or maybe the reason to do the topic is because it has never been done in a certain way, or in using certain methodology. Yeah, maybe absenteeism of workers has been done using quantitative survey all this while, but there's no qualitative data to really understand the reason behind high absenteeism in any organization. That could be it, yeah. So now your research on that topic is new because it's offering a new way to look at the issue. So, in trying to find the topic, uh, beside finding the research, yeah, the reason behind why you want to do it, try to also list possible research topics and that you think is suit your current passion or current interest or the current situation, and then try to find the one that you most preferred based on four key criteria. Explain later. But before that, we have to ask this question. Yeah, what am I interested in? Okay, what information do I need in order to answer those questions? Okay, and how will I get it? Okay, so we have to consider all the alternatives out there about how we can get it. You know, what information are available. So the more information available, the more practical the research topic that you have in mind. Yeah, the more accessible, the more practical or researchable your topic will be. Okay, so the criteria are these: the four criteria that I mentioned before. First of all, interest, intrinsic interest in to me. Yeah, so from the list of topic that you have listed just now, you take you make a list, a checklist of which one among them is most interesting to you. Okay, and you also look at whether it has been done in the past, whether it will be easy for you to get information or background information about it uh, using past literature, and also you compare them based on how useful they would be in terms of your own future career. Yeah, because sometimes we are interested or passionate about a topic, but this topic, if we do it, will not be contributing to our expertise in our future career or future intended career. Yeah, so you have to think about that as well. Okay, and then we also think about accessibility of the data. How easy or difficult to get the data, how costly or not costly to get the data for topic A, topic B, topic C, and then decide from there. Because as I mentioned in the first week of the lecture, um, research is not free. It has a lot of costs that, to be incurred, and so we have to plan the budget very properly and identify our source of funding properly. Okay, so when you have all this ticked, then you can see clearly which between topic A, B, and C would suit your need and your interest at the moment more than the others. The next step is formulating a research problem about your research topic. So let's say you have already decided to do topic A, and then you have to continue reading the literature in order to formulate the problem for the topic, the research problem, finding the gap. This is important. Okay, gap of research means something that is yet to be known or to be discovered, to be researched. Yeah, so that's why we have to read the latest literature on the topic and see what else have not been done about the topic. What else have not been done? Maybe within all the context that we have already looked at. Yeah. Maybe it's not done yet within the context of Malaysia, for example, or it is not done yet within the context of a quantitative approach, for example. Anything, yeah. So all your decision has to incorporate all the criteria that I have already mentioned in the previous slides, yeah. Then only you will understand the gap, and once you have the gap of research understood, then it's easier for you to formulate your research problem. Okay, the problem need not to be precise. because later on you will fine tune it using your objective. Yeah. So once we understand the gap of research, we try to fine tune it by asking all these questions. Who is involved? Yeah, who would be our target respondent, unit of analysis? Who would be the right party to go to in order to get the information? Yeah, what do they do? Yeah, what are they involved in? Yeah, are they involved in developing new products? They have what is it about them that makes them a relevant unit of analysis for that study. Where are they located? This has implication on your cost. Yeah, if you don't know where they are, then it's not easy for you to budget your research. Okay, why? Why are you doing this? Yeah, why is it that you need to address this problem? When can you do this? Or when was the situation last resolved? Issue of timing, yeah, temporal issues have to also be looked at to fine tune your research problem, and also how you can address the research problem that you already have in your mind. Okay. Stage two of the research process is to review the literature. This is a very important stage of any academic research, because literature review will give us not understanding of not just what is the most suitable topic, what is the gap of research to be addressed, but also it can be like the entire basis of the research. Yeah, that's why some people, if they do not have yet their empirical data, they do not have yet collected the data, they can create a paper based on systematic or bibliometric review of the literature on any topic that they like. So when we do the literature also, we will have a better understanding of what research has been done by others in that topic. Yeah, what are their findings, and then also use their work in order to develop our own assumption or our own hypothesis for our research. Okay. Um, Reading other people's work or past literature can also give us an idea of what is the best way to collect the data. You know, what would be the methodological or theoretical considerations that we have to incorporate in order to make sure our research is a good research. Yeah, and we can compare. Yeah, that's why comparison is important when we do literature review, because we have to be critical. So critical thinking requires us to constantly ask questions, compare and contrast between all the literature that we are reading. Okay. The next step would be to devise a conceptual framework. By this stage, we have done a lot of literature review already, and we are ready to actually have a mental map of our conceptual framework. Okay, so the conceptual framework explains the main thing that we want to study. Okay, and you is normally in our proposal in the form of a diagram. Sometimes we don't need to have a diagram. We can just write it down. Yeah, we can use words. This is called narrative form. Okay, so during this developing this conceptual framework, we will use the key factors, all the constructs and variables, and the presumed relationship that they among them that we have understood from our literature review. Okay. And so this conceptual framework can be very basic, or it can be very elaborate. Basic means you are looking at just direct relationship between independent and dependent. Okay. Elaborate maybe there if you introduce a moderating variable or a mediating variable to the relationship between independent and dependent variable. So that makes it more elaborate. Elaborate here means more complex, more difficult. Yeah. And when we do our conceptual framework, it has to be theory driven. It has to be based on what we understood about the theory related to the topic that we're looking at, and it has to have some common sense. Okay. And our research can be descriptive research or causal. Remember, I told you what causal means. Causal means there is a relationship that we are looking at, whereas descriptive is just describing. Yeah, we're not testing anything. So then this is a diagrammatical representation of how we develop a conceptual framework. We often start with identifying the concept or what is relevant to the topic first. Yeah. So this can, as I mentioned earlier, has to be done through reading the literature, understanding the most relevant literature to your topic, and basing your assumption about the concepts on them. Okay, so you identify and list these concepts or construct first, and then you define it. Yeah, when we define, also we have to look at past literature. That means how did all the past researchers define the construct, and we have to do so accordingly, or we can modify our own, because we also need to operationalize the concept. Operationalize the concept means we define in a way that we can measure it. Yeah, we can um, put numbers to the concept, or that make it possible for us to measure the concept. Okay, and then we also explain the relationship between the concepts. Again, this is looking back at the past literature and how past researcher has explained or explored the relationship in their own respective studies. Concepts can be the following. Okay, so let's say you're trying to do a study on tourism activity participation. This participation can be, uh, for example, visiting a destination, that's for tourism, or choosing to stay in a bed and breakfast, that's for hospitality, or choosing to attend a certain conference, that's for event. Yeah, so this participation, what would be the influencing factors? Yeah, what would make them decide to attend a certain conference, or a certain bed and breakfast, or a certain destination? Yeah, so this has to do with decision making process. Yeah, decision making process of tourists is important for us to understand, because as a provider you have to know how to serve your market better. So if you know what makes them happy, then it's easier for you to serve them, or encourage them. So, in regards to activity participation in our context, the influential factor could be availability of resources. Resources here means time and money. Yeah, of course, we need time to travel. We need money to travel. We need time to go leave our home and stay in another accommodation. We need money for that also. And the same thing goes with attending an event such as a conference or a concert. Okay, so that could be one construct. Okay, or the promotional side of it. Yeah, the quality of advertising and promotion can also influence people's tendency to participate. Yeah, the cost involved. Yeah. Some people, for the majority of us, cost is a major factor. Yeah, unless you're a millionaire or a billionaire, then maybe cost would not be an issue. But otherwise, cost is a big factor when we want to participate in any tourism, hospitality, or event occasion. Okay, and also issues such as chance events, such as influence from our friends and families, that can also be a contributing factor to our decision making. And another concept that will be considered as an influential factor is our own characteristic as an individual, because each individual is different. You know, we have different tendencies if we look at just the age differences. We have a different tendencies if we just look at the income differences. Rich people, they like things certain way, middle income certain way, and poor people will have certain decision making. Yeah, and also issues of personality and past experience. These are all factors that can influence a person's characteristic, which in turn influence their tendencies of to participate in tourism, hospitality, or event activity. Okay, So I hope you understand this. These are just an example of what concepts and constructs can be when we are doing an academic study. So we put that in the format, yeah. So referring to the example that we have just now, um, the a person or individual that we're looking at can be either a participant or a non-participant. So we're looking at this unit of analysis, and then what are the factors that influence them? Yeah. So it can be, as what we have already looked at just now, it can be cost of price, it can be advertising quality, marketing quality, it can be chance event, it can be accessibility, availability, anything that we have already found from the literature review that we have looked at. Right? And also, besides the influencing events and circumstances, we also have the individual characteristic that can influence how an individual react or decide on something. Yeah. So this is how we draw our conceptual mapping or conceptual framework from all the information that we have already gathered about the topic. So the next stage that I showed you before is we have to operationalize the concepts. Yeah? Operationalize the concepts means we have to define in a very precise manner uh, who they are, yeah, and what they are engaged in. Yeah. So an example here, person's definition of a participant in a leisure activity, yeah, is the person engages in relatively free chosen activity during leisure or free time. And how do we operationalize this? Is we operationalize it by giving it duration, yeah. So the definition, the operational definition becomes participation in activity identified as leisure at least once in a preceding year. Preceding means before, last year. Yeah? So once in the last year. So that's how we operationalize it. If the respondent fit into this operationalization, then they are fit to be your unit of analysis or your respondent. But otherwise, let's say they did not participate at all in any event last year, then they're not suitable for your study. This is another example, yeah, in the context of tourism. Definition of participant in tourism is people who travels away from home for leisure purposes. And how do we operationalize it? We say is people who travel for leisure purposes at least 40 kilometers from home, that means not nearby, and at least one overnight stay in preceding 3 months. So these are the numbers to make sure that we have the right person to be our respondent. Chance event is unplanned occurrence which affects decision to participate. Okay, so it can be like when you meet up with your friends, your families, yeah. So how do we operationalize it? How do we measure this? We can say we can operationalize it. We can define it by saying events which have individual claims affected recent decisions to participate, such as bad experience or advice from friend and relative, read or seen in the media. So as you can see again, it is very detailed. Yeah, operationalization means we detail out who or what would be used to define that person or that thing. So that's why you have to, so that it's easier for you to measure it. Um, Individual characteristics, another influencing factor that we have looked at in the example that we looked at just now. You can define it. Yeah, define the individual attributes such as the age, income, personality, past event. Age, we can operationalize it by looking at just the current age, yeah, last birthday. Income, annual household income before tax. That's how we operationalize it. Personality, maybe we use some kind of personality test like Myers-Briggs test or something like that to identify. or past experience, which we operationalize by looking at the activities taken in the last 6 months, yeah, or the last 5 years. So basically, what you need to understand is when we define or operationalize our concepts, we make the definition, the operational definition, very specific in such a way that we can easily measure it in our study. The next stage in the research process is to decide the research question. Okay, we can focus on the project by asking a question that requires an answer, or a problem which requires a solution. Okay, we have to decide based on the gap of the study, what are the research questions that we should ask in order to gather the correct information that could contribute new knowledge to that problem, yeah, to that gap. So we can do it in the form of hypothesis also, where a hypothesis is expressed as a statement, which must be proven either true or not true, yeah, false, yeah. And from the research question, we can decide on our research focus and finally our research objectives. Okay. Okay. So once we already have our research objective, it should make it easier for us to list with the kind of information that we need in order to fulfill those objectives. Yeah. So we need to make sure that we understand how accessible this information would be, also, and how easy it is for to get this information. Okay, so this is where we start to strategize on how we want to design our research so that it becomes practical and would be successful in the end. Okay. And so once we already have the list of information we need, we know where to find it, then we can now start planning of how to find it, how to get it. Okay, so we need to have strategies. Yeah, strategies would include identifying what we need to do, the stages of uh, things that we need to accomplish in order to get the information, the data. Yeah. So for some research, um, the constructs or the variables not really very clear yet. So they may need to their strategy may include a scoping stage. A scoping stage is like an exploratory stage where you interview people using qualitative approach so that you can understand about the phenomenon better using all those information that you get from the qualitative interview. Then, once you know that, you can design your research better, and you can set the variable that you want to identify much clearly. Yeah, so it will make it easier for you to do your actual data collection and actual um, research. Then we need to also decide the gathering techniques and to get all the information. Yeah, whether we want to do this quantitatively, qualitatively, we are using mixed methodology, which means a combination of qualitative and quantitative. Okay. So while the operationalization of concepts and identification of information needs processes may already have indicated certain types of information sources, it is at this stage that your detail is more determined. Okay, because you already have the list of information you need. You have also identified the stages of strategy that you need to get this data. And so now, how are you going to actually implement it? Yeah, what kind of methodology you want to do? We can utilize existing information. That means secondary data. Yeah, or we can use observation in order to do this if we choose to do this qualitatively. Yeah. There are also other qualitative methods we can include, such as ethnographic study. Yeah? Ethnographic means understanding the information by being inside a particular culture and living with them, so that you understand as an insider of what that culture is really like. Yeah, or you can do other methods such as participant observation, informal and in-depth interviews, group interviews, and focus groups. Um, in the future lectures, we will be looking at this in more details. Okay. Quantitatively, we could be doing questionnaire based survey. Yeah, questionnaire based survey could be face to face, or you send through mail. Yeah, or you go to people's houses and interview them using the questionnaire, or you do telephone surveys, postal surveys, all kinds of different kinds of surveys that can generate the numbers that we need to understand the situation. Or we can do experimental method, which is done using a control setting. Yeah, although this is more for scientific studies, not so suitable for social science such as tourism, hospitality, and event. And finally, we can use case study approach. Case study approach means it can be any methodology, but looking at just one specific case. Like let's say, for example, in the case study is UUM. So whatever the topic that we are doing, the context is just UUM, and UUM has its own unique context. It cannot be generalized to other contexts. Yeah, so that's why it becomes a case study. A case study can also be just one hotel. Yeah, let's say Sri Malaysia Hotel, and you are studying Sri Malaysia Hotel and Exchange, which means all the output that you get are based on in the context of Sri Malaysia only, but not any other kind of hotels. Yeah. Then you need to decide the data analysis techniques to be used. Okay, this will also be explored in more detail in future lectures. But basically, data analysis techniques that is most common for quantitative is by using SPSS. Yeah, if you are not familiar what SPSS is, Google it. I'm sure you will get a very simple definition of what SPSS application, see how it works by just looking at it through in the internet. Yeah. So how do we, by using SPSS, we can do either just a simple descriptive data analysis, or we can do something more complex, such as using regression or using PLS. Yeah. So it again depends on the research objective that we have. What kind of analysis is required in order to fulfill that research objective. Then we have to decide also on the budget. Yeah, at this stage of planning, budget is very important. Now that you know what you need, how you're going to try to get it, you can actually try to anticipate the kind of money or cost incurred, and then decide your budget properly. And finally, of course, you have to do your timetable. Yeah, how long you want to allocate for your literature review, how long you want to allocate for actual data collection, how long you want to allocate for data analysis, and the like. Um, Once we have decided the budget, we have decided the timetable. Another thing that it could be useful in place of timetable is a Gantt chart. Yeah, Gantt chart and timetable does the same thing. It basically gives you a guideline of the duration that you plan to have in order to accomplish certain milestones, certain steps. Yeah. So, for example, maybe month 1 to month 3, you just do literature review, and then from month 3 to month 5, you focus on data analysis. Yeah, and the like. But basically, when we do this timetable, we also have to take into consideration our own uh, constraint, our own time constraint, our own budget constraint. Yeah, Also, what the, for example, if our research is being sponsored by any funding body, what are their constraints? When do they want to see the report? That will also dictate the timetable that you do. Okay. Then, once you have done this, you also now have to consider about any possible ethical issues you may face, and strategize how you want to get clearance for all these ethical issues. Yeah, how do you want to overcome the ethical constraint? Yeah, maybe you need to start to get some kind of letters to give you permission to enter certain communities for research, or certain permission from the government body in order to do the research properly and ethically. Okay. Generally, when we talk about research ethics, one of the key issue is that when the research has to be competent and trained. This would ensure that they don't just go to the target respondent and annoy them. They know exactly what to ask, how long they want to spend, how long the respondent has to spend time with them, yeah, and what kind of information they can or cannot get uh, from the respondent, yeah. So that's why a researcher has to be very competent, well trained, they know the do's and don'ts, and so they follow the proper guidelines of being a good researcher. Okay. When we do the literature review also, there's an ethical issue there, in the sense that we should avoid plagiarism at all costs. You know what plagiarism is? Plagiarism is taking someone else's work without acknowledging them. Okay. So it's a very dangerous territory. It could land you in court, so you don't want to do that. So that's why we have to make sure that the issue, when we when we review the literature, we review it properly, and we cite properly all the resources that we get, and we use to support our study. Yeah. And then when we have the results, when we do the analysis, remember I told you that when we analyze quantitative data using SPSS, it can be garbage in, garbage out, in the sense that if you don't design or properly analyze data, what you get in the end is something that is not really true, it's not really valid. Yeah. So maybe when you have this, your tendency is to falsify the data, to correct it in the sense that it becomes true. So that is falsification of the data, which will be misleading, yeah, which is unethical to do. So once we know that we have gone through each of the steps and we have planned properly and thoroughly, then it is time for us to actually go to the field and conduct the study. So this research could take either 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, depending on the objective of the research. Yeah, and once you have done all that, we have done analyze the data and make inferences. Then of course we have to prepare the report findings, either for our thesis or for our consultant job, or for any grant that we have already that has already been given to us. The report has to be done properly. Yeah, and so that it can be presented to the audience, and the findings can be disseminated through research to journals and the like. Here are some of the factors that could impede or slow our research process. Um, One of it would be the most favored methodology syndrome. That means we never like qualitative, even though for the purpose of that research, qualitative method is the best way to get the data. But since we do not like qualitative, and maybe also we do not have the expertise to do qualitative approach, then we are stuck with quantitative method, because we like that method and we are good with it. Yeah, so that could be one way to make the research slower, because Um, Even though we got the data using quantitative method, maybe there are some aspects of that information that we cannot get because we did not do qualitative method. Yeah, so that could be an example of favorite methodology syndrome. Another thing is if we did not formulate our research objective properly. Yeah, the objective is to solve the world's problem. That is not possible. We cannot solve the world's problem, because each of you or each of us will have to have a focus on a specific focus on that topic, on that study area. Okay, do not try to solve the research the world's problem. It could also be because we did not think properly about our research question, and we ask questions that cannot actually be answered. Yeah. So when we do this and we start doing data collection and everything, then we realize, of course, how do we get that answer? We cannot. Yeah, because the questions was not formulated properly in a way that it is answerable. Problems not being defined properly. So again, this all shows that the first few stages of the planning process are very crucial to make sure that we do this first 4 or 5 stages of the research properly, thoroughly, and thoughtfully. Okay. And also, if you are influenced by certain party politics or certain kind of governing bodies to say certain things in a certain way about your study, then of course the research is no longer valid. Yeah, it is a biased research now, and because it follows what is required by the politician just now. Okay. And so that's it. Yeah, the summary of it is the 9 stages that you need to consider in planning your research is this. Yeah, selecting the topic, reviewing the literature, devising a conceptual framework, deciding the question, listing the information needs, then followed by a research strategy, obtaining ethnic approval, conducting the research, and reporting the findings. That's what you need to do when you are planning a good research. Yeah? Okay, so this is just for you to start thinking about research plan. Yeah, if I will throw to you one particular topic, and you can try to use all the steps that I have already shown you just now in addressing this particular topic. Okay, try to do this on your own so that you have some understanding on how to apply the steps that I have already mentioned to you just now in this lecture. Okay. So the question is, if AirAsia were to engage in a study, what will the focus be on? So this gives you a variety of ideas of which angle. Yeah, up to you. You be creative. Which angle you want to look at. Outline ways in which it might use research to pursue its objectives. Yeah. Based on the above outcomes, investigate its research activities. What proportion of the budget does it devote to research? How are the results of the research used by the organization or others? Yeah. So I think this information can be found online. If you can find it online, it's good. Or if you have like friends or families or relatives that work in AirAsia, maybe you can ask them. Yeah. But otherwise, don't worry about it. My point in including in this discussion point is for you to try to apply all the concepts that we have looked at today to make it more easy for you to remember later on. Okay, so I think that's it. I get for this.